Number 1. Aaron Hernandez. He had everything most athletes could ever dream of: fame, fortune, and a Super Bowl ring within reach. To millions of fans, Aaron Hernandez was a rising star, one of the most talented tight ends in the NFL. But behind the polished smile and stadium lights was a man living a double life, one that would unravel into one of the most shocking true crime stories in modern sports history. Aaron Joseph Hernandez was born on November 6, 1989, in Bristol, Connecticut. He grew up in a close but troubled family, where football became his escape from tension at home. His father, Dennis, was a respected figure in the community and pushed Aaron and his brother to succeed in sports. But after Dennis died suddenly when Aaron was 16, something changed in him. Friends later said his personality shifted overnight. He began surrounding himself with a different crowd, showing flashes of aggression and making choices that hinted at a darker side brewing beneath the surface. At the University of Florida, Hernandez became a standout player under coach Urban Meyer. He won the 2009 BCS National Championship and earned the John Mackey Award as the nation's best tight end. But off the field, warning signs appeared. He reportedly failed multiple drug tests and was linked to violent outbursts, though his athletic talent often overshadowed those concerns. Despite the red flags, the New England Patriots took a chance on him in the 2010 NFL Draft. In the NFL, Hernandez quickly proved himself as a powerful and versatile tight end, forming a legendary duo with teammate Rob Gronkowski. By 2012, he had signed a $40 million contract extension, becoming one of the league's brightest young stars. But while he smiled for cameras and scored touchdowns on Sundays, his private life was spiraling. He began associating with street-involved friends from Connecticut, carrying firearms, and growing increasingly paranoid. According to reports, he had a home security system with dozens of cameras and even a secret room hidden within his mansion. The turning point came in June 2013, when the body of 27-year-old Aldon Lloyd was discovered in an industrial area near Hernandez's home in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Lloyd, a semi-professional football player and the boyfriend of Hernandez's fiancée's sister, had been found with multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators quickly connected the dots. Surveillance footage showed Hernandez with Lloyd hours before the killing, and cell phone records placed him at the scene. Within days, police searched Hernandez's house and uncovered a trail of evidence: destroyed security footage, a rental car tied to the crime, and shell casings that matched those found near the victim. The New England Patriots released him the moment he was arrested. The once celebrated athlete was suddenly facing a first-degree murder charge, and the world watched as his career collapsed overnight. During the 2015 trial, prosecutors argued that Hernandez orchestrated the killing of Aldon Lloyd over a perceived insult during a night out. They painted a picture of a man consumed by anger and control, who lived as though his fame placed him above the law. The defense, led by attorney James Sultan, tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative, pointing to the lack of a clear motive and no direct eyewitnesses. But the forensic evidence was overwhelming. Tire tracks, phone data, and surveillance video formed a digital map of the crime. On April 15, 2015, Aaron Hernandez was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was transferred to the Souza Baranowski Correctional Center, a maximum security facility in Massachusetts. Just 2 years later, while serving his sentence, he was acquitted in a separate double homicide case involving a 2012 drive-by shooting in Boston. But any hope of redemption was short-lived. On April 19, 2017, correctional officers found Hernandez dead in his cell. The official ruling was suicide. He was 27 years old. His death came only 5 days after the acquittal verdict, leaving many to wonder what led him to take his own life at the moment his legal prospects seemed to improve. In the aftermath, His brain was examined by researchers at Boston University, who diagnosed him with severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head trauma in football players. His case became one of the most cited examples in debates about the long-term effects of brain injuries in contact sports. Aaron Hernandez's story remains one of the most disturbing and tragic in NFL history, a cautionary tale of a gifted athlete consumed by violence, paranoia, and self-destruction. He went from celebrated player to convicted killer in just a few years, leaving behind unanswered questions about how much of his downfall was shaped by personal choices and how much by the hidden cost of the game itself. Even now, years later, people still ask how someone with so much promise could lose everything so quickly. Some see Hernandez as a symbol of wasted potential, others as a product of a system that ignored warning signs until it was too late. Either way, his name will forever stand as a reminder of how easily fame can mask a darkness that even the brightest spotlight cannot hide. Number 2. Darren Sharper. He was once celebrated as one of the NFL's elite safeties, a 5-time Pro Bowler, a Super Bowl champion, and a respected voice on television after his retirement. To fans, Darren Sharper represented discipline, intelligence, and leadership on and off the field. But beneath that polished image, investigators would later uncover a long-running pattern of predatory behavior that shocked both the sports world and the public, turning one of football's brightest stars into one of its darkest figures. Darren Mallory Sharper was born on November 3rd, 1975, in Richmond, Virginia. Raised in a family of athletes, he excelled in sports from an early age and quickly made a name for himself at the College of William and Mary, where his defensive instincts and sharp mind caught the attention of NFL scouts. In 1997, the Green Bay Packers selected him in the second round of the draft, launching a career that would span 14 seasons. Over the years, Sharper played for 3 teams: the Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the New Orleans Saints. He became known for his ability to read quarterbacks, intercept passes, and change the course of games. By the time he retired in 2010, he had racked up 63 interceptions, ranking among the best defensive players of his generation. He was charismatic, good-looking, and well-spoken, qualities that helped him transition smoothly into broadcasting, working as an analyst for the NFL Network. But as his fame grew, so did his arrogance. Behind closed doors, Sharper lived a vastly different life than the one fans saw on screen. Between 2010 and 2014, reports began surfacing of women across several states describing similar experiences. Nights that started in luxury bars and hotels with Sharper and ended in confusion, fear, and lost memory. For a long time, the pattern went unnoticed. Each case was isolated by jurisdiction, and Sharper's celebrity status shielded him from serious scrutiny. That changed in 2014, when a series of overlapping investigations from Los Angeles, New Orleans, Tempe, and Las Vegas began connecting the dots. Detectives found striking similarities in each report. Same pattern, same methods, and often the same brand of pills found in his possession. When federal investigators stepped in, the picture became undeniable. Darren Sharper, the former NFL star, had been living a secret life that spanned multiple states and countless victims. In February 2014, Sharper was arrested in Los Angeles. What began as a local case soon grew into one of the most extensive multi-jurisdictional investigations ever involving an athlete. Prosecutors in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Louisiana filed charges, while federal authorities coordinated evidence across state lines. The evidence included toxicology reports, surveillance footage, and testimony from victims who described eerily similar experiences of trust turned into trauma. As the cases unfolded, Sharper's legal team negotiated plea agreements to consolidate the charges and avoid multiple trials. In 2016, he pleaded guilty to felony charges in both state and federal courts. The plea deal acknowledged that his actions had harmed numerous victims across the country, and it carried a federal sentence of 18 years in prison, a term meant to reflect the gravity and scale of his crimes. During sentencing, federal judge Jane Trichet-Malazzo called the case horrific, stating that Sharper had used his celebrity and status to prey upon the vulnerable. For many, it was a moment of reckoning. The NFL community that had once celebrated him now distanced itself entirely. His name was removed from team records, and his television career was erased almost overnight. Behind bars, Sharper has maintained a low profile. He is currently serving his sentence in a federal correctional facility, eligible for release in the early 2030s if he completes his term without violations. Former teammates have expressed disbelief at how someone they trusted could have led such a double life. Some have described the scandal as a reminder of how power and privilege can distort accountability, even in a tightly regulated world like professional sports. The downfall of Darren Sharper left a deep scar on the NFL's reputation. This wasn't a story of impulsive violence or sudden rage. It was one of planning, manipulation, and long-term deception. Fans who once wore his jersey now see it as a symbol of betrayal. What makes his case stand out among others isn't just the crime itself, but how calculated and widespread it was. How he managed to live undetected for years while maintaining a spotless public image. Today, when people look back on Sharper's career, they see two sharply contrasting images. The athlete who helped lead the Saints to their first Super Bowl victory, and the criminal who exploited his fame to commit unforgivable acts. The two sides of Darren Sharper will forever be inseparable. A reminder that even the most disciplined professionals can hide the darkest secrets behind the mask of success. In the end, the story of Darren Sharper isn't only about his crimes, it's about the dangerous illusion of perfection. He had everything: skill, admiration, and opportunity, but chose a path that destroyed countless lives, including his own. For those who once cheered his name, the realization that someone so admired could cause so much harm remains one of the most chilling truths in sports history. Number 3, Rae Carruth. He was young, talented, and destined for stardom. As a first-round NFL draft pick, Rae Carruth had everything going for him: the speed, the charm, and a multi-million-dollar contract that promised a life of fame and comfort. But what began as a story of athletic promise ended as one of the most heartless crimes ever committed by a professional athlete. His fall from grace would not only shock the sports world, but also leave an innocent child fighting for life before even taking his first breath. Ray Lamar Wiggins, known as Rae Carruth, was born on January 20th, 1974, in Sacramento, California. He grew up in a single-parent home and showed early signs of athletic talent. Football became his way out, leading him to the University of Colorado, where he quickly became one of the team's standout wide receivers. His ability to make plays under pressure caught the attention of NFL scouts, and in 1997, the Carolina Panthers selected him in the first round of the draft. His rookie season showed flashes of brilliance: 44 catches, nearly 600 yards, and 4 touchdowns. It looked like a bright future was unfolding. Off the field, Carruth was known for his confidence and charisma. But those close to him described another side: a man deeply concerned with control, image, and reputation. In 1999, that need for control took a devastating turn. Carruth had been in an on-and-off relationship with a 24-year-old real estate agent and aspiring teacher named Sherika Adams. When Sherika became pregnant with his child, Carruth reportedly reacted with anger rather than joy. Friends later said he was worried the pregnancy would damage his career and finances. On the night of November 15, 1999, Cherika Adams was driving home after seeing a movie with Carruth. He was in the car ahead of her, leading the way down a quiet road in Charlotte, North Carolina. Moments later, another vehicle pulled up beside her. Gunshots rang out. Cherika was hit multiple times, her car veering off the road. Bleeding and in shock, she managed to call 911. In that desperate call, she identified Rae Carruth's involvement, telling the dispatcher that he had slowed down in front of her just before the attack. When police arrived, Cherika was rushed to the hospital. Despite catastrophic injuries, doctors were able to save her unborn son through an emergency cesarean section. The baby, named Chancellor Lee Adams, survived, but with permanent brain damage caused by oxygen loss during the attack. Cherika never recovered. After weeks in a coma, she passed away on December 14, 1999. The investigation moved swiftly. Evidence showed Carruth had conspired with a group of men, including a nightclub manager named Van Brett Watkins Sr., to carry out the attack. Prosecutors said Carruth had orchestrated the shooting to avoid paying child support and to keep his image intact. He fled shortly after the incident, sparking a nationwide manhunt that ended when police found him hiding in the trunk of a car in Tennessee, carrying $3,900 in cash, chocolate bars, and bottles of urine, an image that would forever symbolize his fall. In January 2001, Carruth went on trial for conspiracy to commit murder, using an instrument to destroy an unborn child and related charges. The prosecution argued that he planned the ambush, using his vehicle to trap Cherika's car so the gunman could fire. The defense claimed he panicked and fled after the shooting, but had not ordered it. The star witness, Van Brett Watkins Sr., testified that Carruth promised money for the killing and later threatened to have him silenced. After weeks of emotional testimony, the jury reached its verdict. Carruth was acquitted of first-degree murder, but convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and other charges. He was sentenced to between 18 and 24 years in prison. The gunman, Watkins, received a life sentence. In prison, Carruth maintained his innocence, but eventually issued a written apology years later, saying he regretted the choices that led to Cherika's death and his son's condition. After serving nearly 2 decades, he was released from Simpson Correctional Institution in October 2018. His release reignited public anger, especially among those who remembered the heartbreak the case caused. Meanwhile, Cherika's son, Chancellor Lee, has been raised by his grandmother, Sandra Adams, a woman whose grace and forgiveness captured the nation's attention. She has devoted her life to caring for her grandson, who now lives with cerebral palsy, but continues to defy expectations. In interviews, Sandra has said she forgives Carruth, not for his sake, but for her own peace and her grandson's future. The story of Rae Carruth is often described as one of the coldest betrayals in sports history, a man who chose to destroy life rather than face responsibility. It's a haunting reminder that success and morality do not always go hand in hand. His downfall wasn't sudden. It was the result of ego, fear, and a tragic inability to accept the consequences of his actions. Today, more than 20 years later, the image of Cherika Adams, fighting to live long enough to name her attacker and save her child, remains one of the most heartbreaking moments in American true crime. Rae Carruth's name is now synonymous not with athletic excellence, but with the ultimate act of selfishness that left a young woman dead and a child permanently scarred. His story stands as a painful warning about what happens when fame and pride matter more than human life. Number 4. Henry Ruggs III. In the NFL, speed is everything. For Henry Ruggs III, it was his trademark. He was one of the fastest players ever drafted, known for his explosive sprints that left defenders chasing shadows. But that same speed, once his greatest strength, became the cause of a tragedy that ended a young woman's life and destroyed his own career in a single night. Henry James Ruggs III was born on January 24, 1999, in Montgomery, Alabama. He grew up in a close family, raised by parents who emphasized discipline and hard work. Ruggs idolized his mother, a former track star, and carried her competitive spirit into football. At Robert E. Lee High School, his athleticism set him apart. He wasn't just fast, he was blisteringly fast. In college, playing for the Alabama Crimson Tide under coach Nick Saban, Ruggs became one of the team's most dynamic wide receivers. He helped Alabama secure a national championship in 2017 and built a reputation as a dependable playmaker who could turn any short pass into a touchdown. In 2020, Ruggs was drafted in the first round by the Las Vegas Raiders, a dream come true. The franchise saw him as their future star, the next big name to lead them into a new era. Off the field, he appeared grounded, posting photos with his girlfriend, Kiara Washington, and their newborn daughter. But beneath the image of success, Ruggs was living recklessly. Like many young players adjusting to fame, he struggled to balance responsibility with the freedom that came with sudden wealth. On the early morning of November 2nd, 2021, everything changed. At around 3:40 a.m., Ruggs was driving his Chevrolet Corvette through a quiet residential area of Las Vegas. His speed, according to investigators, reached 156 miles per hour. His blood alcohol level was later measured at twice Nevada's legal limit. Ahead of him, a 23-year-old woman named Tina Tintor was driving her Toyota RAV4 with her golden retriever, Max, in the back seat. Moments later, Ruggs's car slammed into the rear of hers at over 120 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic. Tina's car burst into flames almost instantly. Witnesses tried to help, but the fire spread too quickly. Tina and her dog were trapped inside and died at the scene. Ruggs, visibly distraught, was pulled from his wrecked Corvette by first responders. His girlfriend, who was in the passenger seat, suffered serious injuries but survived. The crash site, near Rainbow Boulevard, looked like a war zone. Debris scattered across the road, the wreckage barely recognizable. Police arrived within minutes. Ruggs appeared impaired, and officers reported the smell of alcohol. The investigation moved quickly, and within hours, the young star was under arrest. The Las Vegas Raiders released him the same day, just 24 hours after the crash. The team issued a short statement expressing condolences to the victim's family, while fans and media outlets across the country struggled to process how one of the NFL's brightest prospects had caused such devastation. Ruggs was charged with DUI resulting in death and reckless driving, both felonies under Nevada law. Prosecutors presented detailed evidence from vehicle data showing his speed before the collision and toxicology reports confirming his impairment. His defense team did not deny the crash, but asked the court to consider his clean record, remorse, and cooperation with authorities. In May 2023, after lengthy legal proceedings, Ruggs accepted a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to DUI, resulting in death and misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter. In August 2023, he was sentenced to a term of 3 to 10 years in prison. During sentencing, Ruggs spoke softly, expressing deep regret and apologizing to Tina Tintor's family. The victim's relatives, through their attorney, said they hoped the case would remind others of the deadly consequences of drunk driving. Since entering prison, Ruggs has remained mostly silent, avoiding interviews and public appearances. His story has been used in anti-drunk driving campaigns as an example of how a single moment of recklessness can erase years of hard work. Former teammates have said they were heartbroken by the incident, calling it a tragedy for everyone involved. A young woman's life lost, and a promising career destroyed before it truly began. What makes Ruggs' story so haunting is its simplicity. There was no complex conspiracy, or hidden motive. Just a series of reckless decisions made by someone who should have known better. He had the world at his feet, yet one night of poor judgment turned everything to ash. Today, Henry Ruggs III remains incarcerated in Nevada, serving his sentence and reflecting on the night that ended 2 lives, Tina Tintor's and his own as an athlete. He will be eligible for parole within a few years, but no amount of time served can undo the loss or the pain he caused. His case stands as a tragic reminder that even the most gifted players, celebrated for their speed and power, are still vulnerable to the same fatal mistakes that ruin ordinary lives. In the end, the story of Henry Ruggs III is not one of fame or glory, but of a split second that changed everything. A moment of speed, a single decision, and a lifetime of consequences, all reminders that no amount of success can outrun responsibility. Number 5, O.J. Simpson. For decades, O.J. Simpson was more than a football player. He was an American icon, a record-breaking athlete, an actor, a smiling face in commercials. He was proof that charm, talent, and determination could take someone from poverty to superstardom. But in time, that same name would become one of the most infamous in modern history. O.J. Simpson's story isn't just about what he achieved, but about how quickly it all fell apart. From celebrated hero to convicted felon. Orenthal James Simpson was born on July 9, 1947, in San Francisco, California. He grew up in a rough neighborhood, raised by his mother after his parents separated. As a child, he battled health problems, but by high school, he had turned himself into an exceptional athlete. His speed and agility earned him a scholarship to the University of Southern California, where he became a national sensation. In 1968, he won the Heisman Trophy and went on to join the Buffalo Bills in the NFL, where he rewrote record books with his power and speed. By the 1970s, O.J. Simpson was everywhere, starring in movies, endorsing products, and living the life of a beloved celebrity. He married Nicole Brown in 1985, and together they became one of the most recognizable couples in Los Angeles. But behind the glamour, their relationship was volatile. Police were called to their home multiple times for domestic disturbances, though Simpson's fame often shielded him from lasting consequences. Everything changed in 1994, when Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found dead outside her Los Angeles home. The gruesome killings instantly made headlines, and suspicion quickly turned toward O.J. Simpson. What followed became one of the most publicized criminal trials in American history, the trial of the century. On June 17, 1994, the nation watched as Simpson led police on a low-speed chase in a white Ford Bronco through Los Angeles. Tens of millions of people tuned in live as helicopters followed the car down the high freeway. When he finally surrendered, he was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The case dominated news for months, turning into a spectacle that blurred the line between tragedy and entertainment. At trial, prosecutors presented evidence they said linked Simpson directly to the scene: blood samples, gloves, and DNA evidence. The defense, led by Johnny Cochran, attacked the credibility of the Los Angeles Police Department, claiming evidence was mishandled or planted. When Cochran delivered his famous line, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," referring to the glove that appeared too small for Simpson's hand, it became a turning point in the case. On October 3, 1995, after nearly 9 months of testimony, the jury returned a verdict: not guilty. The courtroom erupted. To some, the decision represented justice against a system seen as biased and corrupt. To others, it was a shocking failure that allowed a guilty man to walk free. The trial divided the nation and reshaped public conversations about race, fame, and the law. Although acquitted in criminal court, Simpson faced a civil lawsuit from the victims' families. In 1997, a civil jury found him liable for wrongful death and ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages. He moved to Florida soon after, living a quieter but unsettled life, often appearing in tabloids and interviews. Then, more than a decade later, Simpson made headlines again, this time for a completely different crime. In 2007, he and several accomplices entered a Las Vegas hotel room to reclaim sports memorabilia he claimed had been stolen from him. The encounter turned violent, with witnesses reporting that guns were drawn. Police arrested Simpson soon after, and this time, there would be no celebrity shield or televised drama to sway public opinion. In 2008, O.J. Simpson was convicted on 12 charges, including armed robbery and kidnapping. The judge sentenced him to 33 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 9. Simpson began his sentence at Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada. For nearly a decade, the man once adored by millions lived behind concrete walls, serving time not for the crime that made him infamous, but for one that reflected how far he had fallen. In July 2017, Simpson appeared before the parole board. He spoke calmly, expressing remorse but insisting he had never intended to harm anyone. The board granted parole, and he was released in October 2017 at the age of 70. After his release, he settled in Las Vegas, maintaining a low public profile while occasionally appearing on social media. O.J. Simpson's legacy is one of contradictions. He was once a symbol of excellence, the first NFL player to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a single season. And yet, he became a symbol of scandal, violence, and wasted potential. His name still sparks debate decades later, representing a collision of celebrity, justice, and tragedy unlike any other. Even now, when people hear his name, they don't think of touchdowns or trophies. They think of the chase, the trial, and the lasting question of how someone who seemed to have everything could lose it all. O.J. Simpson's story is no longer just about football. It's a reflection of how fame can elevate a person to mythic heights, and how one set of choices can bring everything crashing down. Number 6. Aldon Smith. In the NFL, few defensive players were as feared or as gifted as Aldon Smith. He was tall, fast, and explosive, a natural pass rusher who could dominate any game he played in. Coaches called him unstoppable. Fans believed he was destined for the Hall of Fame. But behind the talent was a young man fighting personal demons, and over time, those demons began to win. Aldon Smith's career became a cautionary tale of how success, fame, and inner turmoil can collide to destroy everything. Aldon Jacker Smith was born on September 25, 1989, in Greenwood, Mississippi, and raised in Raytown, Missouri. He was quiet but confident, the kind of athlete who made difficult things look easy. At Raytown High School, he played football and basketball, showing raw power that impressed college scouts. He earned a scholarship to the University of Missouri, where he quickly became one of the top defensive prospects in the nation. His blend of speed and strength made him nearly impossible to block. In 2011, the San Francisco 49ers drafted him 7th overall, and he didn't disappoint. In his rookie year, Smith recorded 14 sacks, an astonishing number for a newcomer. The next season, he had 19 and a half, just half a sack short of breaking the single-season record. Fans began to talk about him as one of the best defenders of his generation. He was young, rich, and unstoppable. But behind the fame, his private life was starting to unravel. Smith had begun drinking heavily, partying often, and surrounding himself with the wrong influences. The first serious warning came in January 2012, when he was arrested for DUI in Miami Beach. The 49ers downplayed the incident, and Smith returned to the field without missing much time. But just a year later, in September 2013, things escalated. He crashed his car into a tree in San Jose and was again arrested for DUI and marijuana possession. Despite this, he played 2 days later, prompting criticism of the team for prioritizing football over his well-being. He eventually entered rehabilitation, but it would not be the last time. In 2014, Smith faced another major setback when he was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport after allegedly making a false bomb threat while intoxicated. Police said he appeared agitated and uncooperative. The 49ers suspended him indefinitely, and it became clear that his off-field behavior was spiraling out of control. Later that year, he was charged with illegal weapons possession after an investigation into a house party where shots had been fired. Though some charges were reduced, the repeated incidents tarnished his reputation and strained his relationship with the team. The 49ers finally released him in August 2015 after yet another DUI arrest, his fifth since joining the NFL. The Oakland Raiders signed him later that year, hoping to give him a second chance. For a while, it looked like he might turn things around. He spoke publicly about recovery, attended counseling, and expressed remorse for his past mistakes. But the progress didn't last. In 2018, police in San Francisco issued a warrant for his arrest after a domestic violence incident. He was accused of assaulting his fiancée, and when officers arrived, he had already fled the scene. Smith turned himself in 2 days later and checked into rehab, but the damage was done. The Raiders cut ties with him immediately. Over the next few years, Aldon Smith's life became a pattern of hope, followed by relapse. He trained privately, applied for reinstatement, and in 2020, the Dallas Cowboys gave him one last shot. He returned to the field after nearly 5 years away and played surprisingly well, recording multiple sacks early in the season. Fans were thrilled to see a glimpse of the old Aldon Smith again. But off the field, his struggles persisted. In 2021, he was arrested twice more, once for DUI in California and later for an alleged battery incident in Louisiana. Each arrest chipped away at what little hope remained for his comeback. Smith eventually pleaded no contest to DUI charges and served time in county jail. The league suspended him indefinitely again, and his professional football career was effectively over. Once a rising superstar, he was now remembered more for his mugshots than for his highlights. For those who watched his rise, his downfall was painful to see. Coaches described him as one of the most naturally gifted players they'd ever trained, yet completely unable to control his self-destructive impulses. Teammates said they tried to help, but that fame had come too fast, and the coping mechanisms never followed. Substance abuse, mental health struggles, and the pressures of celebrity combined to create a storm that even his talent couldn't overcome. Aldon Smith's story doesn't have a dramatic twist, no hidden conspiracy or shocking betrayal. It's a story of wasted potential, of how unchecked addiction can destroy even the most promising lives. He had everything: money, respect, the admiration of millions. But the one thing he couldn't conquer was himself. Today, Smith is no longer part of the NFL and lives largely out of the public eye. He has spoken briefly about personal growth and recovery, though his legal troubles have continued to shadow him. For those who once believed he could become one of the greatest defenders of all time, his story serves as a sobering reminder that talent alone isn't enough. Aldon Smith's legacy is one of brilliance and tragedy intertwined, proof that even the strongest athletes can fall if they can't face what's within. His journey from the top of the NFL to the inside of a jail cell shows that in the end, no amount of strength or fame can protect someone from the consequences of their own actions. Number 7. Adam Jones. For a time, Adam Pacman Jones was one of the most electrifying players in football, a fast, agile cornerback who could change a game with a single return. He had charisma, confidence, and the kind of swagger that drew attention both on and off the field. But behind that energy was a temper he couldn't control, and a trail of violence and arrests that would follow him throughout his career. His story is one of endless second chances and the self-inflicted chaos that ruined what could have been an extraordinary legacy. Adam Bernard Jones was born on September 30th, 1983, in Atlanta, Georgia. He was raised by his mother and grandparents after his father was killed in a robbery when Adam was just a child. That early trauma shaped him, creating a toughness and defiance that showed on the field. At West Virginia University, he became a standout defensive back and return specialist. His speed and aggressiveness made him one of the most exciting prospects in the 2005 NFL Draft, where the Tennessee Titans selected him 6th overall. He was only 21, rich, famous, and surrounded by people who encouraged his wild behavior. Jones entered the league with immense talent, but little discipline. He quickly gained a reputation for partying and confrontations, and his nightlife habits began to overshadow his performance. The first signs of trouble came early. In 2005, he was arrested for assault and vandalism following a nightclub altercation. Over the next 2 years, his name would appear in police reports more than 10 times for incidents ranging from disorderly conduct to public intoxication. Each time, the league warned him, and each time, he seemed unable to stop. The incident that defined his downfall came in February 2007 at a Las Vegas strip club called Minx X. Jones was there celebrating NBA All-Star Weekend with friends. According to police reports, when he began throwing money toward dancers, a common club gesture known as making it rain, an argument broke out with the club's management. Moments later, gunfire erupted outside. 3 people were hit, including a security guard who was left paralyzed. Witnesses told police that Jones had instigated the fight and threatened one of the men involved. While he wasn't accused of firing the gun himself, prosecutors argued that his actions helped trigger the violence. The incident drew national attention and forced the NFL to act. Commissioner Roger Goodell suspended Jones for the entire 2007 season, the first major test of the league's new personal conduct policy. Jones publicly apologized, but soon found himself in more trouble, facing additional charges for assault, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest in separate incidents. It became a pattern: arrest, suspension, apology, and relapse. After a brief stint with the Dallas Cowboys in 2008, where another fight broke out during his suspension, Jones seemed finished. Most teams wanted nothing to do with him. But in 2010, the Cincinnati Bengals gave him one last chance. For a while, it seemed to work. Jones played hard, stayed out of major trouble, and even earned praise for his performance on defense and special teams. His energy and raw emotion made him a fan favorite, and for a few seasons, he looked like a player redeemed. Still, trouble followed him. In 2013, Jones was arrested for punching a woman outside a nightclub in Cincinnati after an argument. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and served a short jail sentence. In 2015, he was fined again for unsportsmanlike conduct after an on-field altercation. Then in 2017, he was arrested at the Cincinnati airport after reportedly pushing and threatening a security officer. Though the charges were later reduced, the pattern was unmistakable. Success always seemed to be followed by self-sabotage. Throughout his career, Jones often spoke about wanting to change. He talked about growing up without a father and the anger he carried from childhood. He said football gave him structure, but fame magnified his flaws. Despite the turmoil, he continued to play until 2018, finishing his career with more than a decade in the league. Statistically, he was a strong player, but his legacy was defined more by the headlines than the highlights. After retiring, Jones tried to stay involved in football, mentoring young athletes and speaking about the dangers of fame and bad decisions. But even then, legal trouble didn't completely stop. In 2021, he was arrested again after a fight at a nightclub in Ohio. He later claimed he was defending himself, but the incident reinforced how his impulsive nature never truly disappeared. Today, Adam Pacman Jones lives a quieter life, but remains a controversial figure. Some admire his honesty about his struggles and his efforts to turn things around. Others see him as the example of wasted potential, a man who had all the ability in the world but couldn't get out of his own way. His story stands apart from many others because it wasn't about a single crime or tragedy. It was a lifetime of bad decisions, fueled by pride, anger, and fame that arrived too soon. He never committed a single act that ended a life, but he destroyed pieces of his own again and again. For every moment of brilliance, there was another of chaos. In the end, Adam Pacman Jones became a symbol of what happens when raw talent isn't matched by self-control. He played with fire and never stopped long enough to see how close the flames were getting. His career reminds us that sometimes the biggest opponent an athlete faces isn't on the field at all. It's the one staring back in the old mirror. Number 8, Michael Vick. There was a time when Michael Vick seemed untouchable. He wasn't just another NFL quarterback. He was a phenomenon. With his speed, arm strength, and creativity on the field, he changed the way people thought the game could be played. Kids imitated his moves in backyards across America. He was one of the most popular athletes of his generation, earning millions and leading the Atlanta Falcons to playoff glory. But all of that came crashing down when investigators uncovered a secret life that stunned the nation. Michael Dwayne Vick was born on June 26, 1980, in Newport News, Virginia. He grew up in a tough neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, and football was one of the few ways out. From an early age, his talent was undeniable. He had a cannon for an arm and could outrun almost anyone on the field. His performances at Virginia Tech made him a national star, and in 2001, he became the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. That same year, the Atlanta Falcons signed him to a record-breaking contract, and the city embraced him as their hero. Vick's early years in the league were electric. He broke rushing records for quarterbacks, made highlight reels every week, and even led the Falcons to the NFC Championship game in 2004. Fans adored him, sponsors lined up to work with him, and he was one of the highest-paid players in the NFL. But while his public image was clean and exciting, a darker side was developing away from the spotlight. In April 2007, federal investigators raided a property Vick owned in Surry County, Virginia. They were looking into reports of illegal dogfighting operations, and what they found would change his life forever. Behind the secluded fences of that rural property was what prosecutors later described as a full-scale operation called Bad News Kennels. Investigators found evidence of pit bulls being bred, trained, and forced to fight for money. The details shocked the public. Dogs that lost fights were killed, and gambling and cruelty were part of the culture. At first, Vick denied any involvement. He claimed he barely visited the property and had no idea what was happening there. But as investigators pressed further, the truth began to unravel. 3 of his associates agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors, giving detailed accounts of Vick's involvement. The evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses, financial records, and physical proof tied him directly to the operation. In July 2007, Vick was indicted on federal charges related to dogfighting, conspiracy, and animal cruelty. The reaction was immediate. Sponsors dropped him, the NFL suspended him indefinitely, and the Atlanta Falcons cut ties. Vick, once the face of a franchise, became a national disgrace. Under mounting pressure, he pleaded guilty to federal conspiracy charges that August admitting to financing and participating in the illegal enterprise. In December 2007, a federal judge sentenced Michael Vick to 23 months in prison. He served most of his sentence at the United States Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. For nearly 2 years, he was stripped of everything that once defined him: fame, wealth, and freedom. During that time, he reportedly reflected deeply on his actions, acknowledging the harm he caused and working with counselors to understand how his choices had led him there. When Vick was released in 2009, few believed he would ever play professional football again. But the Philadelphia Eagles decided to give him a second chance. He returned to the NFL that same year, humbled and visibly changed. Many protested the decision, arguing that he didn't deserve another opportunity after the cruelty behind his crimes. But on the field, Vick gradually rebuilt his reputation through discipline and performance. By 2010, he had completed one of the most surprising comebacks in sports history. He led the Eagles to the playoffs and was named the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. Off the field, he became an active advocate for animal welfare and worked with the Humane Society to speak against dogfighting, particularly in at-risk communities similar to where he grew up. Though his comeback impressed many, the controversy never fully faded. For millions, his name will always be tied to the images that emerged from those investigations: the suffering of animals and the betrayal of public trust. For others, he represents the possibility of redemption. A man who took responsibility, paid his debt. Number 9. Lawrence Phillips. Lawrence Phillips was the kind of player who looked unstoppable, a running back so strong and aggressive that defenders dreaded facing him. On the field, he was pure force. Off it, he was chaos. His life became one of the most tragic and self-destructive stories in football history, marked by violence, repeated arrests, and a final ending that left the world wondering what could have been if he'd found peace instead of anger. Lawrence Lamond Phillips was born on May 12, 1975, in Little Rock, Arkansas. His childhood was defined by instability. He grew up in poverty, moved through foster care, and spent time in group homes. Those early years taught him to survive through toughness, but they also left deep scars. Football became his escape, the one thing that gave him direction. His talent was undeniable, and by high school, he was a star running back known for his explosive speed and bruising power. Phillips earned a scholarship to the University of Nebraska, where coach Tom Osborne helped mold him into one of the most dominant players in college football. In 1994, he led the Cornhuskers to a national championship, and scouts began calling him a future NFL great. But even as his fame grew, trouble followed. That same year, he was arrested for assaulting a teammate during a heated argument. The charges were minor, but the signs were clear. Phillips had a temper he couldn't control. In 1995, Nebraska was once again on top of the college football world, but Phillips nearly threw it all away. After an argument with his ex-girlfriend, basketball player Kate McEwen, he broke into her apartment and assaulted her. The incident shocked the nation. Despite the seriousness of the allegations, Coach Osborne controversially allowed him to return for the national championship game, citing a desire to help him rehabilitate. Phillips scored a touchdown in that game, but public outrage was immediate. It was the first major sign that his off-field life might one day overshadow his athletic gifts. Despite red flags, the St. Louis Rams selected Phillips 6th overall in the 1996 NFL Draft, believing they could change him. The gamble failed almost immediately. Phillips clashed with coaches, showed little discipline, and continued to spiral into violence. In 1997, he was released after repeated confrontations and a series of missed team meetings. Over the next several years, Phillips bounced from team to team: Miami, San Francisco, Montreal, Calgary. But the pattern never changed. Each time, he showed flashes of greatness, followed by self-destruction. In 1999, while playing for the 49ers, he was released after refusing to block during a game, a decision that led to his quarterback being injured. Coaches called it one of the most reckless moments they had ever witnessed on the field. Off the field, his behavior grew worse. He was arrested multiple times for domestic violence, assault, and driving offenses. The incidents blurred together, each one worse than the last. In 2005, things reached a breaking point when Phillips was accused of deliberately driving his car into 3 teenagers after an argument during a pickup football game. He was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon and sentenced to 10 years in prison. While serving that term, another trial followed. This one for attacking an ex-girlfriend. In 2008, he received an additional 25 years, ensuring he would spend most of his life behind bars. Inside prison, Phillips continued to struggle with anger and mental health issues. Guards described him as isolated and volatile. Then, in 2015, he was charged with the killing of his cellmate, former arena football player Damian Soward. Phillips denied responsibility, claiming he was being targeted by other inmates, but the evidence against him was strong. Before the case could go to trial, tragedy struck again. On January 13, 2016, Lawrence Phillips was found dead in his cell, ruled by officials as suicide. He was 40 years old. The news stunned those who had followed his life. Former teammates and coaches expressed sorrow, but admitted they weren't surprised. Many said Phillips had been fighting demons since childhood, pain he never learned to control. Even Coach Osborne, who once believed he could save him through structure and mentorship, later said he regretted not doing more. Looking back, Lawrence Phillips's story reads like a slow-motion collapse. Every time he got another chance, he found a way to destroy it. Talent wasn't the issue. Discipline, compassion, and accountability were. He had been given everything a young athlete could want, yet he never escaped the anger that defined him. Today, his name is a warning in sports circles, a reminder of how ignoring early signs of violence can lead to disaster. He's remembered not for the yards he gained or the touchdowns he scored, but for how completely he lost control of his own life. Lawrence Phillips had all the gifts to be one of the greats. Instead, he became a symbol of wasted potential, a man who could run through any defender on earth, but not the battles inside his own mind. Number 10, Ricky Leon Williams Jr. Ricky Leon Williams Jr. was not a household name in the NFL. He wasn't a star or a longtime starter, but for a brief moment, he was part of the league. A player who had reached the dream so many young athletes chase. That makes his story even harder to understand. What began as a story of determination and perseverance ended in one of the most disturbing criminal cases connected to professional football. His name became synonymous not with achievement, but with a crime so shocking it left his small community stunned. Ricky Leon Williams Jr. was born in the early 1980s in Texas and grew up surrounded by the culture of football. He played the game through high school and college, earning a reputation as a hard-working and disciplined athlete. Though not as naturally gifted as others, his drive caught the attention of NFL scouts. After going undrafted, he briefly signed with the Cleveland Browns, spending time on their practice squad. For Williams, it was validation, proof that the years of training and sacrifice had finally paid off. But his career never took off. After being released, he bounced around smaller leagues and regional teams, struggling to find stability or purpose outside the sport. When football ended, Williams returned home to Mississippi, where his life began to unravel. He worked odd jobs, and tried to rebuild his life, but reportedly began facing financial and emotional troubles. Those close to him noticed that he had grown withdrawn and increasingly unpredictable. Behind the scenes, tension was brewing in his personal life, particularly with his girlfriend, Kendra Smith. Friends said their relationship had turned volatile, filled with arguments and jealousy. On the night of May 24, 2016, everything reached a breaking point. Police in Pascagoula, Mississippi, were called to a quiet residential area after neighbors reported hearing screams and gunshots. When officers arrived, they discovered a horrific scene. Inside the home were the bodies of two women, Kendra Smith, Williams' girlfriend, and her friend Crystal Jackson. Both had been shot. Williams was nowhere to be found. The following morning, authorities launched a statewide manhunt. Less than 24 hours later, police in Jackson County located Ricky Leon Williams Jr. after receiving a tip about his whereabouts. He was arrested without incident and taken into custody. Detectives said the motive appeared to be domestic conflict, a fight that escalated into violence. The news spread quickly, shocking locals who had once celebrated him as a hometown success story. The same man who had once worn an NFL jersey was now facing 2 counts of capital murder. During questioning, Williams showed little emotion. Investigators later revealed that evidence at the scene, including the ballistic analysis and witness statements, pointed directly to him. In court, prosecutors argued that the killings were deliberate acts fueled by rage and jealousy. His defense team claimed he had suffered from mental health issues and long-term emotional instability following the end of his football career, but that argument did little to sway the jury. The facts were overwhelming, and the loss of 2 innocent lives weighed heavily on everyone in the courtroom. In 2017, Ricky Leon Williams Jr. was found guilty on both counts of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was transferred to the Mississippi Department of Corrections, where he remains to this day. For many who knew him growing up, the verdict brought a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that justice had been served, but sorrow for how completely his life had fallen apart. After his conviction, media coverage of the case slowed, but its impact lingered. The story served as a sobering reminder that even those who seem to have made it can lose everything when violence and pride take control. Local residents described Williams as a man who had gone from being an example of hope to a cautionary tale of failure and regret. In prison, Williams has kept to himself, declining interviews and avoiding public statements. Officials have described him as quiet and compliant, though still carrying the weight of his actions. The families of the victims, particularly Kendra Smith's relatives, have spoken publicly about the lasting pain of their loss, emphasizing that fame or athletic success does not excuse violence or erase accountability. Ricky Leon Williams Jr.'s case is different from many others on this list. He wasn't a superstar with millions of fans or endorsements. He was a man who had touched the edge of greatness, only to fall back into obscurity, and then darkness. His life shows how quickly anger and emotional instability can destroy not only one person's future, but the lives of others around them. Today, he is remembered not as a player or a local hero, but as an example of what happens when violence replaces self-control. The same discipline that once carried him to the professional level vanished in the face of rage. His story ends not in stadium lights or applause, but behind prison walls. A grim reflection of how one moment of irreversible violence can erase everything a lifetime of effort built.